I want to thank you for joining us today for this conversation about what's a buzz in Berlin on a big news day.
Yeah,
I'm Steve
absolutely.
Sokol, the president of the American Council on Germany, and I want to welcome everybody to our regular gathering on Clubhouse. Each week we meet with Berlin-based journalists to talk about emerging stories and breaking news, and we've taken this experiment a step further by providing this conversation both on Clubhouse and on Zoom. And I am delighted to be joined today by German journalist Gordon Repinski. Gordon, it is great to see you. You're the deputy editor-in-chief of The Pioneer, but let's start by having you tell those people who don't know what The Pioneer is.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. It's a pleasure being with you today, and it's a big news day, but we're going to discuss this later. The Pioneer is a very, very ambitious and interesting startup, I would say. It's the idea of reinventing political journalism and business and cultural journalism, but mainly political journalism in Berlin on a digital basis. We're working a lot with newsletters and with podcasts. And if you want to compare us to anything out there, maybe it would be political, although our approach is a little different, a little different because we are so focused on podcasts and not like not not necessarily going for as many articles as possible per day, but more going in depth in different topics. And we've been in the market since a bit like around a year, and we're great. It's subscriber based, and we're happy about the positive feedback we get.
Well, I certainly enjoy the daily update from Gabor Steingart that gives me a sense of what you're focusing on at the Pioneer every day. And as you say, lots and lots of podcasts and interesting information about
Yeah,
the hot topics and breaking news.
yeah.
So there we are, hot topics and breaking news. It really seems as if things are heating up in the race between Armin Laschet from the CDU and Markus Söder from the CSU in terms of who the Kanzlerkandidat or the chancellor candidate of the CDU-CSU faction will be. Yesterday, it was interesting to see that Markus Söder announced he would be happy to be the Kanzlerkandidat if there was enough CDU-CSU support for that.
Yeah.
Earlier today, the CDU leadership stood behind Armin Laschet despite his waning popularity in the polls. Who do you think is the front runner, and what should we be watching?
Well, the funny answer would be the front runner is Annalena Baerbock of the Green Party, because she certainly would benefit from the big dispute they actually have within the conservative parties. And you have to see it's not only the battle around this position of candidate for chancellor, it's also before they were battling around who's going to be the head of the Conservative Party. So it's been 2 years of draining discussions, and I still think it's not solved. It seems like Armin Laschet will win it because for the simple reason that the consequences of not supporting him would be too big. If the CDU would decide they would support Markus Söder, it would be you would have a lame duck who is just newly appointed to be the head of the CDU. And if you have a lame duck newly appointed as a head of the CDU, you would probably also lose the prime minister of the most important state in North Rhine-Westphalia. So long story short, this price is too high. So Armin Laschet has to do it. After a lot of controversy and discussion, I think the majority of the people who are in charge of big positions in the CDU have seen that, and so you have to understand the vote today like this. That doesn't mean they are really convinced he's going to be a good chancellor. But yeah,
Well,
let's
it's
go
interesting
deep.
because it seems as if Armin Laschet has a lot more to lose after fighting off Friedrich Merz and Norbert Röttgen. As
Yeah,
you say, it would weaken him as the party leader. It would weaken him as the minister president. And it would be a big loss if the CDU-CSU decided to go with Makasuda. But part of me wonders how much of this is political theater on Makasuda's part to give him leverage down the line.
Great question, because it's a great question. I was wondering about it a lot as well. And you remember the moment when he was in Herrn Chiemsee, in this big, golden, super fancy castle in Bavaria, hosting an event together with the Chancellor Angela Merkel. And from this point, I thought, okay, this guy actually doesn't want to become a chancellor. He just wants to be the closest to the king of Bavaria that you can imagine. So this supports your theory of like he actually wants to have as much leverage as possible. I think there was a point when that changed recently. I think there was a point when parliamentarians from the CDU were increasingly calling Markus Söder or his supporters, closest allies, to convince him to run, because they were fearing that they would lose their mandates. And so at some point, I think there was a shift, and Markus Söder, who is very Bavarian, at heart, decided that he would have to go for this. I still think, with the fact that he said he would do it if the CDU supports him, he still plays the ball to the CDU and let them decide. And if they say, no, we want that, we want Armin Laschet to do it, I think he has still great leverage. And he will still, he can play with the popularity he has in Bavaria. That is benefiting himself. And then he has great leverage, which is benefiting his party. So all that is strengthening his position. And that I think is a great second prize for him.
So, Gordon, how quickly do you think the Kanzlerkandidat question will be answered?
Well, we had the Präsidiumssitzung 9:00 today at the CDU. We will have the same thing in Bavaria this afternoon. Most likely, the CSU guys and women will support Markus Söder. But having the vote from the CDU, and having in mind that Markus Söder said, if the CDU decides for Armin Laschet, I'll respect that. The decision is there. And so I think there's no point in waiting longer than, I would say, 24 to 72 hours from now.
So you actually think that the CDU-CSU will make its decision before the Greens choose their Kanzlerkandidat or Kandidatin a week from today on April 19th. You had alluded to the fact that this infighting within the CDU-CSU could benefit the Greens, and even went so far as to say who you think the Green Kanzlerkandidatin will be, namely Annalena Baerbock. But can you talk to us a little bit about what's going on within the Greens, particularly since both Söder and Laschet have talked about the Green Party as a serious challenge to them come election time in September?
Yeah, well, interesting thing, because I think the Green Party is has become somewhat a perfect PR machine. So they seem to recently really enjoy the fact that there was so much trouble going on within the Conservative Party around the question who's going to be the candidate for chancellor. And so they were kind of enjoying it and playing it out to their best, saying we're gonna present the candidate for chancellor on the 19th of April. Also, they were sending around a letter to the members of their party saying, if you want to know it, just sign in, get our newsletter and know it first. All these things that were like annoyingly harmonic if you see it as a conservative. And indeed, I think it is their authentic style. I think both would have been willing to do it. I think also Robert Habeck, or would be, let's say it's not decided. I'm sure it is decided, but let's say it isn't. Robert Habeck would be willing to do it. Annalena Baerbock was struggling just for the simple fact that that she was thinking about the consequences for her family. But I think she's convinced at this point that she wants to do it and that she will do it, and they will do it as a strong team. And I think it would be a good decision for them to go for Annalena Baerbock, for the fact that it is at core still a feminist party, right? I mean, they come from the feminist movement of the 70s, also from other movements, anti-nuclear and stuff. But this is one part of their core, and having the chance to appoint a candidate for chancellor who really has it's very possible that it's going to be the chancellor, and then to say we're not choosing the woman, we're completing the field of 3 men running for chancellor, is to me impossible. This is a very strong reason why I think Annalena Baerbock will be the candidate. This the above all the fact that she's a great politician. Above all is that she really managed to be from a respected respected but not very known politician in the parliament. She really became first equal to a very present and popular figure like Robert Habeck, and at some point actually passed him. And I think a very big reason for her to do it, or for the Greens to decide for her, is also that Robert Habeck is too, a bit emotional, making mistakes, being hurt by what's happening in public. Remember his withdrawal from Twitter because he's making too many mistakes. Imagine how this would be in an election campaign when you're really vetted by public, if you're able to be strong enough, also to deal with pressure. So I think it's enough reasons to say Annalena Baerbock will be it.
Gordon, let me push you on the Greens just a little bit. I always follow the Sonntagsfrage, as I'm sure you do as well. Sort of, it's a way of measuring the pulse of what people are thinking in terms of which party they would support if it was election day. And it's interesting to see that the CDU-CSU is down at 27%. That's down about 10 percentage points from where they were as recently as February. The Greens are up to 22%. But the Greens have notoriously polled much better than they've done on election day. With a view to September, do you think that might be different this time around?
Another great question, Stephen, I have to say, because it's a big question. It's a big question because there are good reasons why it can happen and very good reasons why it wouldn't happen this year. So I'm going to tell you the best reason why it would happen. That is that the chances that the country is doing better in summer are quite high. Vaccinations are more widespread. Majority of the population will be vaccinated. Summer, the weather is better. People can go out. People can be social again. Restrictions most likely will be loosened. All that kind of stuff, and then people will get a bit more positive about the whole situation. First reason. Second reason. There will be a big discussion in summer when it comes to serious discussion who's going to be the chancellor. There will be a discussion about the consequences of a potential Green chancellor, which are, for people from the Bürgertum, we're not talking about a typical left-wing party. We're talking about people who were former voters of the Conservatives who might move to the Green Party with their votes. They will have to decide, do I really want higher taxes? Do I really want a speed limit on the highway? And all that stuff. So there will be a couple of people, quite some people, who back to the Conservatives, which is, the safe choice for the typical German. So there's good chances that it will go like this. Now, there's also very good chances that it won't go like this, which is, for me, it's not Angela Merkel who's the opponent. It's Armin Laschet, most likely. Yeah, that is a change in the game, because Angela Merkel at the end was really somebody you could rely upon, whereas Armin Laschet is somebody the public hasn't decided if they want him or not. The tendency is they rather don't want him so much. That's what you see from polls, right? So that might change very possibly, but like the most popular candidate among the three will most likely be a Green, and that is a good chance. And then also you have to see that Haber and Baerbock is for the audience, for the voters of the Green Party, the perfect combination of a woman and a man, different types, different styles, different history. They are working very well also together, and the Green Party wants to take responsibility so badly after 16 years, that they are really willing to compromise. And that willingness to compromise is something that had been appreciated by the conservatives. That kind of reliability. And some of that has been taken over by the Green Party. So I wouldn't decide on that. It's good chances that it goes left or right here. But I think for sure, I would say the Green Party will get strong and stronger than ever into the next parliament.
So, Gordon, we've not even talked at all about the Social Democrats, and that's probably an indicator of the current status quo, that they're hardly to be seen in all of this, or even that they're conspicuous in their absence. What's your explanation for why the Social Democrats have not been able to make some of the infighting within the CDU, CSU, as well as some of the corruption scandals within the CDU, CSU work to their favor, so that they're able to increase their profile as well during this period?
Yeah, different parts of my answer. The first part is a big structural problem of the Social Democrats, who kind of since Schröder, let's say, they've been struggling to reinvent the idea of social democratic politics, which they haven't achieved. So there's a structural problem that they have to fight against, and they do it quite well, because I'm convinced the structural problem is so big that at some point they could have been only in the 9-8% region already if they had done it a little worse than they do. They have been governing, high standard, and they are having strong ministers, and they are not not battling, not fighting so much as before. So I think the 17% can already be seen as partly as a success. So that's only one part. The other part is the strategy was of the Social Democrats to say, the chancellor will not be running again, but the wish of the Germans is continuous politics, continuity, not big changes. And who could, if the chancellor is not running again, who could better represent that than the vice chancellor, than Olaf Scholz, so who's very close to the style of Angela Merkel in terms of governing, not so much PR focused, very focused on good governance, if you will, and stuff like this. So now we have a little different situation where Angela Merkel is not shining so bright anymore, with the crisis that we have in Germany, and the wish of some kind of change here or there is getting a bit bigger. So to just say I'm going to do it like Merkel for somebody who's a social democrat really doesn't work anymore. And then you see that, and then it's also a spiral. Once the Green Party benefits a bit more, they get more into focus, and then the discussion, as we've had it since now, until now, the discussion is the Green Party versus the Conservative Party, and then you just stop discussing the factor if the Social Democrats or Olaf Scholz could become a chancellor. And once you stop discussing it, you're on the way down. And I think this is what's happening right now with the Social Democrats, and it's very hard to break that tendency, but they'll have to think about it, and they do.
So as we sort of take a lay of the land of the political party landscape, let me ask you one more question, and this one's about the Alternative für Deutschland, the alternative for Germany. I was interested to read that at their, I guess, party conference, they called for a Dexit, or for Deutschland, for Germany leaving the EU as part of their national party platform ahead of the election. What sort of response has that gotten? How have people responded to that?
Well, I mean, generally, it's not a very new point. It has always been brought up by the AfD to have this idea of like a strong Germany, and not to spend the money on the European neighbors and all that kind of things. And so it's a bit consequential that they brought it up again at this big party convention. It's a controversial point within the AfD voters, which I think to a majority, being this nationalist populist party, reflects what their voters want. What you could see and what you could see over the past years, and also in this party convention, is that the party more and more moves to the right. Like it once started as a Eurosceptical party, which then was kind of over, Bernd Lucke being the front runner, then moving over to Frauke Petry, who was already being more on the nationalist more right-wing conservative side, which again at some point was wiped out by Alice Weidel and Meuthen, and now Meuthen is, and in Gauland for sure, and now Meuthen, the head of the party, again, is about to be replaced by someone else at some point. You could see that Björn Höcke, who's the leader of the right wing of the party, has become, has shifted a little bit more to the center of the party. So I think it's a big tendency that the party gets more and more radicalized. But also we have to see, as we've been talking about Corona all the times, and the pandemic and the migration issues are not so much in the focus. The AfD couldn't really benefit from the losses of the CDU-CSU. A bit, they could 1%.
Gain traction in this current crisis. But that leads me to perhaps a final point, because I know that you have a hard stop at 3:30. So in 4 or 5 minutes, we haven't really talked about the Stimmung, or the atmosphere in Germany, particularly as it relates to the COVID response and the safety measures that have been introduced and the vaccine rollout. Obviously, there's a lot of frustration associated with that. But the other big topic is the Infektionsschutzgesetz, or the infection law that is probably going to be passed by the Bundestag, but the relationship between the federal and the state level in terms of who's responsible for taking care of the citizens. Can you talk a little bit about the debate that's playing out between the states and the federal government?
Yeah. Well, the point starts with the Ministerpräsidentenkonferenz, this very informal meeting of the prime ministers of the states together with Chancellor Merkel, and discussing the newest measures, regulations, and everything about the corona politics that had been quite okayish successful, let's say, until January, until it became messy. Then this group of it's not a legitimized democratic forum, right? There's no coalition in that sense. There are no strict rules. And when the public discussion moved towards, we want to reopen businesses and things like this, whereas the numbers were going up with infections, it became really messy, because then you had some states who wanted to open, others who wanted to be more strict, and so at some point you had Merkel not being the politician who says, okay, stop here, I want it like this. Being in between all this, and then the last 3 meetings of this Ministerpräsidentenkonferenz, we didn't really see clear results. And so we were in a situation in Germany where you could, where you were doubting if we had a political class that was able to take decisions. And then at some point, Merkel said, okay, then we're not going to have another Ministerpräsidentenkonferenz like this, but we're going to find restrictions on a parliamentarian level that will make it possible that the rules that we have agreed upon will be put through in reality. That is things like, what do you do if you're on a level of more than 100 infections per week and 100,000 people? For instance, we're discussing the curfew, the Ausgangssperre in Germany. So are you, there's different regulations. In Bavaria, you have it. In Berlin, you have some kind of in-between thing. In other states, you don't have it. So there's going to be a strict rule, most likely imposed by the parliament tomorrow, and then probably being established or being started to work by the weekend. That, for instance, above 100, there will be a curfew between 9 and 5. This, to me, is, at some point you could say it strengthens the parliament, but for me, mainly it is a point to say we can't do it the way we did it, and the states who haven't found a position to find a compromise, have lost power in this discussion.
And that sort of brings us back to where we started, right? Because both Armin Laschet and Markus Söder are minister presidents. They are part of the Ministerpräsidentenkonferenz. Laschet called for a bridge lockdown, ein Brückenlockdown, until a critical mass of people had been vaccinated. But of course, the vaccination rollout is a cause for frustration in Germany.
Yeah, absolutely. And you pointed out those two figures who are the main acts when it came to useless conflicts and fights in Corona politics in the last month. And in fact, they both lost a little bit of power in this discussion.
Well, Gordon Repinski, the deputy editor-in-chief of The Pioneer, I would love to continue the conversation, but I know that you need to get back to the breaking news and cover it. I hope we can have you back again for another Kaffeepause later in the year. There's obviously a lot to watch, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you, Stephen. It was my pleasure, and I'm happy to be back.
Good. Look forward to seeing you. Stay well, and thanks also to our viewers and our listeners. Stay well, everybody.